All right, old school NBA fans, self-researched NBA facts. I got another video for you here. I just want to say thanks to anybody who's been watching my videos. I appreciate it. I make these videos specifically for the NBA fans who want to just work their way through all the fluff and the nonsense and all the junk that gets spewed, and just want some black and white, cold hard facts, indisputable. I've had some people say in the comments, or you're trying to twist the facts, or you're whatever, but I'm not. I'm just saying it like it is. This is how it is. Now, the things I'm speaking on are typically things I don't hear a lot of other people talking about. Sure, some people have touched on it and whatever, but I just want to expand on it, give the full picture, add some context to it, something that's sorely lacking, especially if you turn on the TV and listen to those idiots. I just saw one about how, if LeBron James wins the championship this year, he's got to be the GOAT or in the conversation. No, I'm thinking, oh my God, here we go again. The guy is playing his first playoff game against Denver. They lost. I'm just saying, like, let's kind of cool our heels here a little bit. Let's see if they can even win 2 games in the series against Denver. But anyway, I don't watch today's NBA. I'll just see the highlights or whatever. But again, a joke. This is like a part B to the video I made, I think it was Friday, about Michael Jordan's 1989 playoff run, which was just an outstanding run. It really was, considering the Bulls were 3-14 against those 3 playoff teams. And then they ended up being 9-8 against them in the playoffs. Just able to kind of flip the script and turn it on in the playoffs when it really mattered. And, there was no significant injuries for any of the teams they played. It was not one of those situations at all. If anything, the Bulls, in that last game of the playoffs, having Pippen taking that elbow and getting knocked out. But again, whatever there. So I've heard a lot about the Cleveland's 2018 playoff run and how great it was. All right, well, let's take a look. The Bulls were 3-14 against the 3 teams they played in the regular season in '89. Well, in 2018, Cleveland was 5-5 against the 3 teams they played in the regular season. They were 4-0 to end the season, so obviously they were playing their best ball at the end of the year. In the first round, they get taken to 7 by Indiana. In the next round, Toronto, they sweep them. Now that's the 1 seed, Toronto. And you want to talk about contrast. Toronto was 59-23, and on its face you're looking like, oh wow, 59-23. They were 40-12 against the East and 19-11 versus the West. So you can kind of see right there, they lost almost as many games versus the East as they did the West, and they played 52 games against the East and 30 against the West. So as you can see, they were much, much better against the East. Against the top 3 teams in the East, they were 5-7, had a losing record. So if you add all that up, they were 35-5 against, I guess it would be, since they were the best team, I'm talking about the 2nd, 3rd, and 4th, the 5th through the 15th best teams in the East. They were 35-5. And there's the base of all their wins right there. And that just goes to show you, some teams like Toronto that year was just good at beating up on the bad teams. But when they run up against a better team, they struggle a little bit. Well, so Toronto, they got taken to 6 games in the first round by the Wizards. Okay, the Wizards. They were like 43-39, whatever. They already got taken to 6 games. And I always say a team that gets taken to 6 or 7 in the first round, they are not an unbeatable team. They're just not. Like the 2014 Spurs, like the 2008 Celtics, those teams got taken to 7 in the first round. But anyway, yeah, that's what happened there. The Toronto. Then the next round they played Cleveland, and Cleveland swept them. And as much I hear about how Kevin Love, was not very good that year, and he was done or whatever. Well, Kevin Love missed 23 games that year, so that affected Cleveland's record. It was much better than the 50-32 that the record portrayed. But anyway, versus Toronto in that series, Kevin Love averaged 20.5 points per game and 11.5 rebounds. Now remember, Toronto's the 1 seed. The best of the East has to offer. Now when Jordan played Detroit in '89, his second best teammate was Scottie Pippen. Against Detroit, he averaged 9.7 points a game. And even though in Game 6 he took the elbow and was out, that probably brought down the average. Even if you take Game 6 out, he would have averaged 11.6 in the other 5 games. I mean, really? That's it? So, as much as people want to talk about LeBron carrying, I want to say Jordan carried his team, and they actually took Detroit to 6 games. They didn't, they beat Toronto, but Detroit was also the champion. Cleveland got swept by Golden State, and this wasn't the Golden State of 17, or they're not at all. They weren't even the 1 seed. I think they were like 58 and 24. I think Houston was the 1 seed in 2018. But anyway, so in the finals, Boston is the team they played. Now they didn't have their best player, Kyrie Irving. He was out. Let's just put that into consideration. And Cleveland beat them in 7. Okay, so the first round they got taken to 7 by Indiana, who was the 5 seed, I guess. They swept Toronto in the second, a very, very overrated number 1 seed, who again beat up the bad teams, no problem. But when they played a real team, most of the time they lost. Got taken to 6 by the Wizards in the first round. Cleveland swept them. And then in the East Finals against Boston, they also got taken to 7. And they were without Kyrie Irving. A bunch of young players like Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum. I mean, they didn't know what they were doing yet, not in the playoffs. And I think that Game 7 was pretty close from what I remember. So pulling out 2 Game 7s on that regard, yeah, that was a pretty decent run to do that. But none of these teams were very good. Let's face it. Come on. Boston without Kyrie Irving. Toronto, who was 5-7 against the top 3 teams in the East. 19-11 against the West. They weren't very good at all. And Indiana, who was just a mere 5 seed. Nothing special about them at all. But anyway, yeah, so a stark contrast is the 1 seed that the Bulls had to play was the Pistons, who were the champions, who didn't lose any games in the playoffs, minus the 2 that the Bulls gave them. And of those 2, they actually won 1 in Detroit, and Detroit hadn't lost in 25 straight home games, and they didn't lose the rest of their home games. There was another 3, I believe, against the Bulls. No, it would have been Game 5. Would have been the 1 against them, and then 2 against the Lakers. So that was 3 more. So that means in 29 home games, they lost 1, and that was the Bulls. So, and Detroit was 19-4 against the West. And 2 of those games were 2-point games. Stark contrast to the 19-11 Toronto. So again, the strength was in the East. Detroit was 44-15 in 1998 against the East, where they were 19-4 against the West. So again, all the better conference was clearly the East. In 2018, Cleveland basically had a pretty doable run. There was no team in there that was any kind of a juggernaut. I just showed you Toronto got taken to 6 in the first round. They the number 1 seed with a losing record in the playoffs. They were 4-6. Please, really? And I know Cleveland was better than the 4 seed that they were given. They were probably more like 1 or 2 seed. But Kevin Love missed 23 games. That affected some things. Some other players missed some games. I think LeBron James missed like 12 games, so that obviously affected the seeding there. So it looks better on paper, but the reality, anybody who really knows that it wasn't as remarkable as what they say. And then, of course, in the finals, they got ran right over because they were no match for Golden State. And even, Golden State wasn't as good as they were in 17, but still good enough to sweep Cleveland without any real issue. But anyway, I think the 1989 run that Jordan did was so much better because of the record he did against the teams in the regular season, and then just flipped the script on them. Where LeBron was 5-5 against these teams in the regular season, including winning the last 4 he played against those teams in the regular season. And then he beat them in 7, a sweep, and then in 7. So to me, it's just not as impressive. And then about the teammate thing, I mean, Scottie Pippen averaged 13 points a game. I think Kevin Love averaged, 10 or 11. But he had a lot of other players that were, playing minutes. They had, I think it was 10 players averaging over 15 minutes a game. Totally different situation there. But nobody talks about that 89 run, but plenty of people talk about that 2018 run. They beat a bunch of mediocre East teams just to get swept right out in the finals. Okay. I mean, whatever. But in the 89, considering that the Bulls were the 6th seed and clearly outmatched by these teams in the regular season, when somehow we're able to turn it on and turn it around, to me, much more impressive. Giving Detroit their only 2 losses in the playoffs. Golden State lost in the playoffs. Hell, they were down 3-2 in the round before. And I think they lost a couple other games too that year in 2018. And Cleveland couldn't even win 1. So again, you ask me, 89 all the way was more impressive. I told a couple people that I would do a part B to this, and this is it. So probably have one more video today later on. And thanks for watching. Until next time.